Hi everyone. So I'll just give it a couple wee more minutes to see if there's anyone else joining us, but thank you for holding tight for just now. So we'll give it maybe give it another minute or so and see what we've got. We've got everyone in, I think. So yeah, thank you again everyone for joining us. And for coming to part three of the Power and Change lineup that we've got on so far. So Power and Change is a program aimed at providing carbon reduction support for community organisations and businesses as well. But before we go on, just a wee bit around the housekeeping. So, all attendees have been muted for this session today. But if you would like to introduce yourself, then please feel free to do so in the chat function. It just makes it a wee bit easier for us to be able to monitor questions and any comments that we might get in. If you would also like to ask the presenters any questions today, then again, if you would like to do so in the chat function, we'll be able to get those shared onto you. The session today is being recorded, so that will be uploaded to the Powering Change website, but also be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Um, so yes, I think that is what we've got so far. There are some previous recordings already on the website, so if you have missed any of the sessions so far, then you can catch up that way as well. So yes, Power and Change Part 3. As I said, there are the first two parts already recorded with slides uploaded to the website. So if you want to catch up, then that is the place to do so. But today's session, we will be looking at what's on offer, doing a bit of a refresh on what we've still got coming up as part of the programme. But the session will primarily be looking at the SmartCarbon platform that you do freely have access to through the programme, and is available for you to get started. The platform is a bit self-guided, but there is the one-to-one support with SmartCarbon, and Molly will be leading you through all of that in the webinar to come. From the agenda, you can see what we'll be covering. So we're really looking at getting that carbon baseline report started. The meetings that you can also have with SmartCarbon and the support around that, and then actually developing your carbon reduction plan. So Molly will be able to show you the platform and how all the information that you'll have and be gathering is input and can be edited as well. So just a reminder about the Power and Change programme. So this webinar series is part of a wider, more structured programme with webinars and one-to-one support for you. The programme is funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which is a government-based fund providing local investment to improve the community's business and places through place-based projects. So all the support that you can receive through this programme is central government funded, and we are not looking for anything else from you guys regarding that. So a bit about us if you've not come into contact with us before. So we're Urban Foresight. You might have seen my colleague Annalisa on the previous sessions. My name's Claire, and we as a company kind of focus more on the community type projects. So really working across the UK and beyond to improve the environment, create economic opportunities, and usually in the local authority context. So we are also joined by our partners at SmartCarbon. They have over 1,000 clients working directly on the types of support that you'll be kind of learning about today and that you can receive as well. So they've got vast experience in this area of running carbon reduction planning. and a bit about what's on offer. So, just as a reminder, through this program, as I said before, we do have a series of educational webinars that are full of information and slides available on the Power and Change website so far. And then there is also that dedicated one-to-one support on carbon reporting and reduction, and of course, the access to the SmartCarbon platform as well. So this program, in terms of timeline, just have a wee look at that. You can get the one-to-one support from now, and also access to the SmartCarbon platform anywhere from now, and then looking out until the end of January, just next year, where you'll have to have your carbon reduction plans confirmed and concluded. But a bit about the why as to why you might want to take advantage of the support that's on offer. Well, creating a carbon reduction plan and understanding your carbon footprint can really help you set that net zero target and demonstrate your ambitions. It can also act as a help in accessing funding for decarbonisation projects in future. So you'll have all this information ready to go, because we understand some of these funding rounds are quite quick, quite fast paced. So, but you'll also be able to compete for public sector contracts. The PPN 006 now means that some tenders will require a carbon reduction plan. So having this and taking advantage of this support means that's all going to be ready and available for you to use. So that's enough about the programme. I'll pass over to Molly, and she'll be able to take you through the SmartCarbon platform and a bit about all the information that you can expect to see.
Thanks very much, Claire. So yes, as Claire said, I'm just going to start with a quick recap on what we covered in the last webinar. So a little bit around just the basics around carbon reporting and the data you need to collect, and then I'll switch on to a demo of the platform itself. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide is really just explaining what the scopes mean when we're talking about carbon footprinting. So scope 1 is your direct emissions. So these are emissions, gases essentially, that come out of things that you are in control of, that are your emissions. So that'd be things that come out of your gases that come out of your buildings and out of any vehicles that are yours as company vehicles. And just to highlight that, although the majority of emissions in scope 1 are to do with building energy, when we're talking about electricity, that falls within scope 2, which is indirect. And the reason why electricity is treated a little bit differently is because if it's part of the grid, electricity is generated from power stations, and any gases associated with creating that power comes out of a power station. So that comes out of an asset which isn't yours. So that's the only reason why electricity is treated differently. Scope 3 is then absolutely everything else. It's all of the emissions associated with things that are coming into your organisation. And then the downstream emissions are all the things that kind of happen as a result of what you do, that happen after your involvement. Next slide, please. And what you have to do before you start your carbon reporting is define what's yours and what to include in it. And for simplicity, for this funded programme, we are advising that everybody takes an operational control approach. And that means that if you have control over an asset, operational control, you might not necessarily own it, but if you've got control over how that asset is used and the energy consumption within it, and then that's considered to be yours, and therefore emissions that come out of that asset are then included in your scope 1 and scope 2. So the difference would be in terms of things that you don't actually own. If you had a rented building, but you controlled how it was used, you had some kind of control over the energy consumption, you paid the energy bills, then that would be considered as you having operational control, and they would be your emissions that go into scope 1 and scope 2. By contrast, if you were in a serviced building and you had no control over the energy consumption, you didn't pay the energy bills, and the energy was just included in a service charge, then they wouldn't be considered to be your emissions. And instead of including it in scope 1 and scope 2, you then included those emissions, or an estimate of those emissions, in your scope 3. So this slide is just looking at what elements of that scope 3, those indirect emissions, we include. If you just click on one, please, Claire, thank you. So what we're doing is we're following that PPN 006, which is the regulations around bidding for major public sector tenders. although you may not be bidding for those big tenders, it might be that the public sector organisation that you're working with might want to see this anyway, just as a sort of demonstration of good practice. So what that requires is that you report on these emissions, circled in purple here. So they are your scope 1 and scope 2, so the emissions that you're directly responsible for, and then 5 categories of scope 3, which is about transportation, distribution of anything to and from your organisation, your waste, your business travel, your employee commuting, and in fact, that's it. The next one is we are also including this calculation is emissions associated with your energy use. And it's about getting that fuel to your asset, essentially. It's slightly more complicated than that, but it's to do with those things that happen before it gets to you. You don't have to worry about it at all. It's automatically calculated on the calculator, but just to let you know that it is included. Next one. What we also do at SmartCarbon, we go one step beyond what PPN 006 requires, and we encourage everybody to consider their purchase goods and services and any capital goods, just because it can be really significant, and to leave it out, we feel is quite a gap and can be a bit misleading about where your major impact is. So we include that in the calculation. And finally, as I mentioned before, if you are in a leased property and you have no control over the emissions, what we would do is we'll account for that energy use in upstream leased assets. So that's only going to be applicable if that's the, oh, excuse me. Apologies for that phone call coming through on the system. So yes, leased assets is used if it's applicable to your organisation. These we went through in the last webinar. These are the principles that are set out in the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, which really guide the way in which we do the reporting. And this is just showing how we approach reporting in line with those principles. So transparency is all about recording any assumptions and estimations that we have to make if there are data gaps. It acknowledges that you might not necessarily have a full suite of complete data for your organisation. In terms of relevance, if we can just go back one, please, Claire, thank you. If a category is not relevant, you can just exclude it. But what we do to make sure that from a PPN 006 compliance point of view, we can show that you haven't just dismissed these categories that are required, we'll just enter 0 against that line rather than moving that category. Accuracy, what the guidance tells us to do is to try to be as accurate as practicable as practically possible. So what we're doing is configured it for a balance of capturing more accurate data around your energy use, where it'd be more significant. So we'll be measuring things in terms of litres of fuel rather than the amount of money you've spent on your energy use. But then whereas less significant areas of your carbon footprint. So, for example, travel expenses might be less significant and harder to measure. We will rely on spend, the amount of money that you spent on travel. Completeness is something you need to make sure that everything that's yours is included in the footprint. So we are configuring the platform to make sure that we include those categories required, and also we'll tailor it to your specific activity within your organisation. And we'll encourage you to, if you don't immediately have data, to try to find that data to fill those gaps. And if you can't find it, we'll work with you to come up with a reasonable estimate for those areas. Consistency is all about making sure that if you do wish to continue to measure your footprint year on year, you're doing it in the same way. So we recommend that you try to go about collecting your data in an organised way and storing it somewhere so you can go back to it and check you're doing things consistently. And we'll also be providing you with a data tracker that you can use if you think it's helpful. So again, you have that kind of structure set out for what you're collecting and in what way. Next one, please, Claire. In the previous webinar, we went through in quite a lot of detail each of the different areas that you need to collect data in, and going through what type of data and in what units you need to collect that for each activity. So, for example, for gas, we'd ask that you collect that in kilowatt hours of gas used. We also talked about typical sources of data, so where you might find that data. So for that gas example, it'd be your energy bills. And we also provided a bit of extra guidance around what to include in certain things and how to make estimations around certain things if you don't have the data. So please do look at that previous webinar if you haven't already seen it, just to get that extra level of support around that data collection. Next one, please. And just one bit of advice before we go into the platform element, the platform demonstration, is really just to double check the data before you enter it. And there's some really kind of basic things that can go awry when you're dealing with data. The first classic one is checking the units, what units you're collecting data in, whether it's kilograms or tons, miles or kilograms. And whatever you collect it in, make sure you're then entering it into the platform, selecting the same unit when you enter it into the platform. Check the period matches. So if you're deciding that you're going to measure the calendar year, for example, make sure that that data you've got matches those months that your carbon footprint relates to. And then just a really basic thing, just check you're adding up. It's very easy to make mathematical errors and formula errors if you're using an Excel spreadsheet, for example, to add things up. So it's just that double check that everything's right before you then put it into the platform. Okay, we're going to switch now, and I'm going to share my screen to talk you through how you actually go about entering your data. So I'm just going to start with what you'll first receive. So we will, once you've signed up, and we'll go through that process later on in the webinar, we will send you your login details, which you'll receive automatically from the platform. And I'll just show you what that looks like. Okay. Can you see that okay? Great. So that's what the email will look like. You'll get your login details. It will show you the link to where to find the calculator. I've set up this dummy one, which is just in my personal email address here, and you get your password. So you'd copy your password, make sure you don't pick up any of the blank spaces at either end. Go on that link, and that takes you to find the window. That takes you to this window here, which is the calculator login. Put in your email address, put in your password, and log in. And that's not helpful. Bear with me a second. I'm just going to log in with my SmartCarbon email address instead for speed. Okay, so this is me logged in SmartCarbon, and I'm just going to go to this is just a demonstration account that I've set up to go through today. So what you'll see when you come in, first of all, you will see a slightly different view to I see as an admin user. You'll see a dashboard, which once you put your data in, will show you some graphs of how your carbon footprint is built up. But what you do is you then navigate to company, and then you get this window here. It will already be set up for you, and we will set up for you your period that you want to use as your baseline footprint. So for this one, we're assuming that it is the financial year of April 24 to March 2025. And we recommend that for your baseline year, you choose a year that matches your financial year, just so that it's easier from an accounting perspective to extract data that matches your financial year. And then you use the most recently complete year, so you've got a complete set of data. The reason we ask you to do that is because we've only got till the end of January to complete this. So if you're missing data, if it's not a complete year, you won't have the data to be able to complete your baseline. What you can do up here is if you want to change your password, we recommend you do that. So you change the password from the automatically generated password and set it up as anything that works for you. And there's your sign out button there. So to enter data, what we do is we click on that year there, and we click on office space here. So what we'll do is the platform is configurable. If you had a complex organization, we can break down the structure slightly. But for organizations through this program, we've just got everything recorded together as total numbers. So this is what the data entry page will look like. It will be shorter than this for you because what we'll do is when we get your information about your organisation, we will filter this down to what's relevant to you. So for example, here under facilities, fuels, I've got a number of different fuels here, but it's highly likely that you're just going to end up with natural gas if you have gas at all. And similarly, you may not have any liquid fuels, unlikely to have wood pellets, but it just demonstrates that we've got an option that we can match whatever fuel you use in your building. These ones here are to do with any gases that you might have in any air conditioning systems or refrigeration systems. Again, if that's not relevant, it just won't show up and we'll just pick whatever gas is relevant to you if it is relevant. The next one is around the vehicles you use. If you do have any company vehicles, whether that's diesel or petrol, again, that will disappear if it's not relevant. And then we move on to your electricity. So the electricity you use from the national grid. If you have any electric vehicles as company vehicles and they come from a separate meter, we can record that separately. And then we're on to the scope 3 emissions here. So what we've got, category 1 here, purchase goods and services, I'll go through in a minute. So what we do is we categorize all of your spend, and then we can put in your spend against these different categories here. And what the calculator does, it has a factor, an emissions factor, that it is already built into the calculator, and which it applies to the amount of money you spend on a particular type of good or service. What we then move on to is upstream transportation and distribution. So if you have any particular freighting companies that bring goods into your organisation, what we can do is measure the spend on those particular organisations. It might be that this is irrelevant to you. You don't necessarily have to separate out spend on deliveries if it's too difficult. If it's just part of the cost that it is included in the cost of getting goods sent to you, we don't have to separate it out and we can include it in the goods and services. But this is, if it's something particularly significant, then we'll include it in this category here. This category 3, fuel and energy related activities. This is what I mentioned before, which is calculated automatically. So for example, if you put natural gas into the energy line, the associated emissions would automatically populate in this line here under natural gas. So that's something you don't need to worry about. Capital goods is again spend based, so it's anything that you would capitalize as an asset in your financial accounts. So it's typically those more expensive items such as electronic equipment, machinery, furniture. If you've purchased any new buildings, for example, or any new vehicles, they would go in capital goods. We're then up to business travel here. And again, it may or may not be relevant to the different types of travel or indeed any travel at all. So we've split it down into how much you spend on road travel, how much you spend on rail travel. For flights, if you do have any flights, again, it may not be relevant to you if you're quite a small local organisation. But if you do, we recommend that these are measured in terms of mileage rather than spend, because flying is very carbon intensive and it's a much more accurate way of recording it. So those can be measured by the distance travelled by mileage. Also in this category is any hotel stays that you've undertaken, and that's just measured in terms of the number of nights stayed. The last one here we've got is employee commuting, and all we need in terms of employee commuting is the annual full-time equivalent number of people essentially who are travelling to and from your premises. If you're a community organisation and you don't actually have any staff or employees, but you do have volunteers who are essentially doing the same kind of activities as a paid member of staff would be doing, just treat those as if they are employees, if they're travelling to and from your business, your organisation, or indeed if they are undertaking travel on behalf of your organisation, even if they're not reimbursed for that cost, we can include that travel that they've undertaken. Waste is the last one here, category 5. So we are measuring waste in terms of the weight of the waste, and into 3 different categories. We've either got closed loop, which is your recycled waste, combustion, which is general waste that would go to an incineration plant, or general waste that would go to landfill. And then we've also got any wastewater here. Water supply is included within the purchase goods and services, and that's something that you can get from your water bills. So in terms of how to enter data, I'm first going to show you what data you might have from your systems, however your systems are managed. It might be that you might have some kind of electronic system and you can download data, or it might be if you're a very small organization, you might just have bills and you might just want to manually add those up together and create written sort of summaries. That's totally fine, whichever way works for you and which works for the way your organization operates. So what I've got here is a made up set of energy bills just to illustrate how to go about it. So I might get off of my system a range of energy bills here I've got from here from February 24 to April 25. The first thing that you need to do, as I mentioned before, is make sure that you select those ones that match the period that you're reporting on. So the period I'm reporting on is April 24 to March 25. In this scenario, I've actually got two buildings. You might not, you might just have one building. And I've also got gas and electricity. So what I've done here is just add those together. And the bit in yellow is the summary of the data. So I've added together all of the gas, all of the electricity, and then I've got a total amount here, which is those two figures I've highlighted there. You just get quarterly bills, then that's totally fine. And if those quarterly bills, again, match that period neatly, that's fine. Just add them up and you'll end up with the same total. But what you might find is if you've got quarterly bills or even kind of over periods that are sort of non-standard periods, what you'll need to do is just estimate and apportion it if you can. So in this example, I've got the first bill straddles the start of the period and the last bill straddles the end of the period. And what I've done here is I've just made an assumption that I'll use a third of the first bill and 2/3 of the last bill. And then again, I've worked that out and totaled it up. And the totals aren't exactly the same, but they're close enough to be a good estimate. And we can then record how we've had to estimate it when we do your carbon report. So I'm just going to shift this out of the way and I'll show you how you then enter that data. So I'm going to go down to my gas line because I've got gas and electricity, and I'll click on can either click on the plus here, which takes me directly to a window, or I can click on the name and that takes me to sort of an intermediate step, which gives a bit more information. So the way you enter gas is you add this, you click on this button here that says add natural gas in kilowatt hours, and it brings up this table here. And this is the table that would have popped up if you clicked on the plus sign. So first of all, you have to select the period. Now you have an option. You can either enter data for each individual month, or you can enter it for the 12-month period, and then the calculator will automatically divide that for you evenly across the 12 months. You may wish to do it on a month-by-month basis if you are interested in seeing how your carbon footprint varies across the year. If you're not so interested in that and all you want to know is for the year, the total amount, the quickest and simplest way is just to enter it for the whole year and then let the calculator apportion it for you. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to select the end month, which will be March 2025. I'm going to put in under units is the total amount you've used. So for me, my figure for gas was 60,967. And the unit type was kilowatt hours. Collection method, this is it's recording how accurate your measurement was. Primary data is if it's the actual amount used, it's the accurate amount used. So yes, I know I've used 60,967 kilowatt hours. So I would select primary data. Extrapolated data would be if you've got a bit missing, and you've got, say, 6 months of data and you want to apply it to 12 months and you've doubled it, then that's extrapolated data. Proxy data would be is if you don't have data for a certain thing, but you have something that's very similar, and you're using that data instead of your own. That's then proxy data. So I'm going to select primary data here. Reference here, you just write down where you've got that information from. So for me, gas bill. Cost per unit, you can enter if you wish. It doesn't really help with your carbon reporting, but if you're interested in also looking at how much you're paying for something on a per unit basis, you can enter that there if you like. Leave this box checked with a tick, because that's how the calculator then automatically populates that category 3, which is your fuel and energy related activities. You click save, and then you can see it's spread that 60,000 out across the months equally, across those 12 months there. What we recommend you then do is, if you've got a file like I have, and you may not have, to attach that as your evidence, so that if you again come back the next year, you can't quite remember what the basis of your calculation was, or you want to see that as a starting point, you can look at the evidence behind it. So you'd go into here, you'd browse to select your file, which for me is here, and you would, it's not going to let me because the file's open, but you'd select it there and then upload the file, and the file would then appear on this page, so you know the evidence. It's also helpful if you want us to review anything, if you want us to check anything, we can then go onto your account and we can open up that file and we can say, yes, that makes sense. That reflects what you've entered into the platform. So that's, you then navigate back, and you can see there that gas has appeared with the ticks there. And also if you scroll down, you can see that it's appeared under that fuel and energy related activities as well. So that's that one. I'm then going to show you, I'll do exactly the same thing with electricity, but I'm going to move on now, and I'm going to show you an example of business travel. So again, this is a made up set of data for an organization. And again, you might, if you've got it recorded on a financial system, you may download your expenses against all travel. Again, the first thing you do is you would then identify the right period that matches your period. So for me, it's April 24 to March 25. What we then need to do is separate out for business travel, road and rail travel from flights. So as I mentioned before, flights we're measuring in terms of distance, whereas road and rail travel we can measure in terms of spend, which might be slightly easier for you. If you want to measure road travel in terms of miles traveled, so for example, if you're a community organisation with volunteers who don't claim expenditure, but you know they're regularly travelling, say 20 miles a week, we can do it by mileage as well. We can configure the platform that way. But in this example, we're doing it by spend. So on my second tab here, I've separated out the mileage and the train travel. So I've got those two separately there. I've summarised them, and I've added I've calculated the two totals. So these two figures here are the total amounts that I'd add into the platform. Flights, what we do, you might know, or you should know where the flight has taken off from and where it's landed. What you can then easily do is there are various different websites that can tell you, once you enter in the kind of departure and the arrival airports, it will tell you what distance that flight has travelled. So in this example, I've got a flight from Birmingham to Milan. It was an economy flight. So I'll note that down as well, whether it was economy or business class, because business class is more carbon intensive than economy, purely to do with the amount of space that's taken up by the passengers. The website will tell me the distance one way, so I need to make sure that I double that if that was a return flight, and then need to check again the units, whether that's in miles or kilometres. It doesn't really matter which, just make sure whatever you collect it in is what you're using to enter into the platform. And then the different categories, this one's a short haul, and this, my second example, Birmingham to New York, is a long haul. So again, I'll show you how to enter that into the platform. So if I go to the rail and the road travel first. If I do my road first, let's find my data. So I will click on there. It's the same window as we saw before for the gas. Click on the same place with that button, add rail travel. So my rail travel here, again, I'm doing it for the whole year. So April to March. My units now are in the amount of money I've spent on it. So for rail, I spent 2211 pounds on it. So I now need to select the unit type, which is pounds. Collection method, again, this is primary data for me. This is the actual cost of the tickets. I haven't estimated any of it. So for me, that's primary data. So on here, I'm going to put my references, travel expenses. That'll be where I got that from. Again, I'm not worried about the cost per unit. And here I'm just interested in carbon. Save that. And again, you can see the ticks have appeared. It's a portion that £2,000 across the months. And again, I can, oh, it's actually already here from when I previously did it. If you add that attachment, it will appear as your evidence. And then again, if you go back to your overview, you can see that under rail travel, that's then appeared there. Road transport would be exactly the same. So I'm not going to show you that, but I will show you one of the flights. So if I go for my Birmingham to Milan, which will be a short haul, so I've got a short haul here to from the UK, and it was economy class. So I click on that. I add the details. You might want to just put this for the month the flight occurred if it's only one flight. But again, the simplest thing is just to apportion it over the year if it was a number of flights. So again, April to March, the number of units I had was return flight 2,152.2. And for me, that was in kilometres. So you can see you got the option of mile and kilometres here. For me, that was kilometres. Collection method, again, it's primary data. I've got a source that tells me exactly how many miles that was. I'm not estimating it. This one would be flight summary, for example, and I save that, and that appears. And again, you can see that it has appeared there in the right place, ticked. And you should, again, if I just scroll down, you'll see the associated additional emissions associated with the fuel used in that flight. And the last one I'm going to demonstrate is the category 1 and category 2, the goods and services and the capital goods, because there's a slight bit of manipulation you need to do before you enter that data. So again, a made up set of data. So the raw data, you might get off your expenditure data here. Again, the first thing you would do is to select the period that they are that relates to your reporting period. And you'd have a whole different list of suppliers down here. And you may or may not have a description of what those suppliers have provided for you. If you do, that's quite helpful to look at that alongside the supplier name, particularly if you're a slightly bigger organisation and you're not familiar with what every single supplier does for you, you don't know their names. So I've just made some up here. So it's a cleaning company, a software company, energy company, for example. The first thing you need to do is you need to exclude any spend that is related to something that you're measuring in a different part of your carbon footprint. So, for example, the main one would be if you are we're reporting your energy use in terms of the amount of energy or the amount of fuel, so kilowatt hours. We don't also then want to measure it in terms of the amount of money you've spent on it because it would be double counting. So what I've done here is any energy bills on here, I've just put a strike through, so I don't include those. Capital goods, we are measuring in the same way, but under a different category. So those need to be filtered out. And again, they are the ones that you treat as a capital asset in your financial accounting. Waste, as I mentioned before, waste is measured in a separate category, and waste is measured in terms of the kilograms of the different waste types. So again, you don't also want to measure that in terms of the amount of money you spent on waste. So that needs to be excluded. And the other category is if you've got anything that's a particular kind of freighting company that works for you, or a courier that works for you, that gets measured slightly separately. So again, you want to exclude it from category one. The other thing that you want to exclude, which might be on your expenditure list, but doesn't particularly relate to receiving goods or services from suppliers, you need to exclude. So salaries is the main one. We don't measure salaries in a carbon footprint, and that's not included. If you have any tax payments to HMRC, so for example, if you had you're paying your business rates or something like that, that wouldn't be included. But the costs from your suppliers do need to include the VAT, any VAT that you're paying on those costs. And the last typical one that gets excluded, we don't need to account for rent that you might pay on lease properties. So here's my list here, highlighting the things that I need to take out because they are either double counted or irrelevant, or the ones that are highlighted in yellow are the things that are my capital offset. So I've got lots of computers, I've got car. So as I did on the other one, I've sorted that into two separate lists. I've got all of those which are goods and services, and then I've got those couple that are capital goods. So taking the goods and services first, the second step, once you've got that filtered down list, is you then need to link those, match those to categories that we've got on the platform. And the categories on the platform relate to SIC codes. So SIC is standard industry classification codes. So that's the kind of industry code for that type of supplier. The way the platform will be configured is to include some typical categories of supplier that we would expect most organizations would probably use. So it might be things around insurance, for example. It's highly likely everybody will have some kind of spend on insurance, so that one will appear. It might be that you buy stuff that doesn't match any of those categories. There's plenty of other categories we've got that we can open up for you. So just let us know, and we can match the categories to what you use. But we just wanted to try and condense it a little bit before we send it to you. So what I've done here is, just for example, I've got a couple of things that are a catering company. I've matched those to the category on the platform, food and beverage serving services. So that's those ones match there. Cleaning companies, again, that might be something that you have. The category that's relevant to that is services to buildings and landscape. I've got computer supplies here, which is printer ink, which we've got printing ink is under this one. Insurance I mentioned is here. Office supplies, there's a category that's paper and paper products. So you can see it's this matching of your particular suppliers to the industry type of supply that they are, or the goods that they're providing to you. What you then do, as we did before, is then just kind of total that up. So everything that comes under each category, we would just sum together. So we've got total amount spent for each of those different categories on here. So I'll just show you, again, just move that one out of the way, and I'll show you how to enter that data. So this is the list here. It's separated into products and services. So it's a case of clicking on whichever one is relevant to you. And as I said, we've got lots of others, a much longer list in the background that we can add to this list if you can't find what you need. So the one, for example, I'm going to do is food and beverage serving services. So this is my catering company. Click on that. And as we did before, it's exactly the same. We will go in, click on this blue button, add it, and the total amount that I spent on that, on food and beverages, was £54 in my year. That's pounds spent. Again, it's primary data. That was exactly the amount of money I spent. So I'm not estimating. This is from my expenditure report. And I'm then going to save that, and it appears. And again, you can see that that is, and if we find it, that then populates that particular line. So that's all the data entry. So it's the same process. There's slightly different units that you collect different types of data in. And again, if you go through that, if you watch that previous webinar, it tells you the different data we're using or the different unit type we're using for the different categories. Once you're done, that's when you are ready to then generate your report. What you need to do, first of all, is you need to mark this period as complete. You need to close it down before you can generate the report. And where you do that is under this actions button here. And it's this line at the bottom, mark this period as complete. So you click on that. What it then asks you to do is enter your number of full-time equivalent staff, or you could, again, if you are sort of powered by volunteers, you can put down the number of volunteers in terms of full-time equivalent in there. And then the floor area of your building. What this allows you to do is that if your organisation changes size and grows or shrinks, then you get this sort of indicator on a square metre basis or on a basis of how many employees you have, what's your carbon footprint. Once that's entered, mark as complete, and you'll see that that then shows you that it's completed on that particular date. If you then go back to the period, because, as I said at the start, for more complicated organisations, we can have more than one division within an organisation. You also need to complete the whole carbon footprint rather than just one part of it. So again, under the actions button, you then have to say finalise this period. What it asks you on here is to put in your turnover. So this is, again, another indicator for your whole organisation. You can see what your carbon footprint is for the amount of money that you turn over. And so there's just an indicative number put in there. And then you click on finalise. So once you've done that, that's then you ready. You've finished your data entry and you can generate your report. Click on carbon footprint report. And it'll be a file that's downloaded for you there. And if I open that file, this is what that automatically generated file looks like. Here, it populates it with your numbers. And there's some bits in here that we then need to add some more detail around that transparency that we talked about earlier, recording the estimations and the assumptions here. There's some definitions. And then you'll get a pie chart that shows you the breakdown of your footprint at the end. What we will then do, if you then send that to us, we can then work with you to turn this carbon footprint report into a carbon reduction plan. And I'll just show you one that is an example here. You can see that here. All it does is it adds in the required extra statements that the carbon reduction plan requires. It's your commitment to achieve net zero, which you may or may not have set a date yet, so we can reflect what your commitment is. It then includes that baseline emissions information, which is what you saw in the other report, the pie charts. And then what we've done in here, we've populated those sections under estimations and exclusions. And the most important addition is what you actually plan to do about your carbon footprint. So what it asks for is things that you've already implemented, so completed carbon reduction initiatives, and we will list those, and then future carbon reduction initiatives. So this would be a conversation with yourselves about looking at your carbon footprint, saying these are the hotspots within it. What is it that we recommend you do, and what you think is a feasible thing for your organisation to do, and how we're going to prioritise that. So there's some listed actions here for this particular organisation. The other thing that is needed for the the carbon reduction plan is a declaration and sign off from somebody within your organisation to say that yes, you sign up to this, you declare that it's correct, and then that's it. That's you done. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I've just got a couple of slides just to finish off, which I think is really just recapping on what I've just showed you on the carbon reduction plan. So if you're all right to share again, Claire.
Can we see that? Is that sharing just yet?
It looks like it's just about to.
Oh, there we go. That might be it. Back with us.
Yes, if we can skip down to 19.
There we go.
I've got 3 slides here, which I'm not going to go through because it is essentially writing down what I've just told you, but it's there on the slides, which we'll share. So if anybody prefers to read something rather than listen to something, there's some instructions there for you. So we just skip through those 3 slides. Okay, so review meeting. So what we recommend is that you have a go, collect your data, start entering it into the platform, get a feel for the platform, and when you feel you're ready, either whether you've got questions or whether you're done and you just want somebody to have a look at it for you, book a meeting with us. What we'll do is when we set you up, we'll send you a link to book a meeting, and you can choose whatever appointment suits you. And then during that meeting, the purpose will be to answer any questions you have, answer any questions around the data collection or how you enter it into the platform. And what we'll do is just do a sense check of your data so far. So we'll look at the information you've already provided about your organisation. So if you've told us that you use gas, but you don't use any other fuel, we will check that you've entered that data for your gas, for example, and we'll check to see whether or not it looks like a reasonable sort of level of consumption for an organisation of your type. This, as I mentioned, this is the carbon reduction plan. So it's based on the template that is set out in PPN 006. And those are the things that the sections it needs to include, and was included on the example that I showed you. Yeah, so these are the bits that the extra bits that we add on over and above what's included in the report that's generated from the platform. So it's just a summary of what support you'll get from us. We've got the webinar, which is the 2 webinars, one on the data collection and one on how to use the platform, which we've just covered. It's then over to you with your data collation and entry into the platform. We'll have the individual data review meeting. One will probably be enough, but again, if you need to meet with us again, that's fine. We can meet a second time. Generate the baseline report, send it to us. We then meet with you, we finalise that report, and we'll have a discussion about what your carbon reduction actions are. If your organisation's carbon footprint's very simple, we could just combine that in a single meeting if that's sufficient. We don't want to meet for the sake of it, but again, if you need 2 separate meetings, that's totally fine. And then once we've had that meeting, we'll add in those actions, and then we'll send you that carbon reduction plan, which will be complete. So the next steps, what you'll have is a link to fill in the form that I've mentioned. So this form is just asking questions about your organisation. It's asking whether you have a building, what fuels the building uses, whether you have any vehicles, whether there's any particular deliveries of stuff to you, whether you do much business travel. So it's asking you those questions so that when we go to setting up your account on the platform, it mirrors what your organisation is, so that you should just have lines that you need to fill in, not a load of lines that are irrelevant to you. So we then receive that form, and we just go back one, please, Claire. We receive that form, we set up the calculator for you, and we will then send you the login details. We'll also set you up the data tracker, which is just somewhere where you can make notes about your data collection. You don't have to use it, it's purely optional whether or not you find it useful. And as I said, we'll send you that link to book a meeting with us. You begin collecting the data, book your review meeting when you're ready, and we'll have that review meeting. You then finalise your data and mark the period as complete. And the next one, Claire. Download the report. Either fill in the estimations and exclusions yourself if you're confident to do that, or we can discuss that with you and help you to do that. And then finally, as we said, we'll add the sections to the report. We can meet again to talk about carbon reduction planning, and then we'll finalise that plan and send it back to you. Um, Good to summarise on the level of support. This is a funded programme, and so there is just a certain amount of time that we can spend with everybody. What we're trying to do to make the most of that time that we've got available is to really empower you to collate the data and enter it accurately yourselves. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that for you. We can help you if you get stuck by all means, but the purpose of these webinars is to give you the instructions, give you the ability to do it for yourselves. We will have these meetings, and the purpose of that is to answer your questions and to do a sense check. Again, we're not, unfortunately, able to go through it line by line and double check the accuracy of everything that you've entered, but we will have a look at it. We will do a sense check and highlight if there's anything that we think is awry. On the carbon reduction plan, as I said, we'll talk to you about what your priority decarbonisation actions are, those that are going to have the most impact. But what we won't be able to do is to quantify how much you'll save as a result of each of those actions and confirm whether or not that will get you down to net zero. So it's really the starting point of sensible things to do. If anyone does want to work with us in more depth, we would be more than happy to do that and happy to take you on as an individual client, which would be an associated cost with it. And that's it from me. So over to you, Claire, to take any questions.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much again for going through all the detail on that. And from just going through the demo, what it does seem like is, would it be right in thinking that people probably have quite a lot of this data already through financial records and invoicing?
Yeah, it should be. It should be stuff that you've already got. The effort is really just collating it, is getting it off your system, pulling it together, and in some instances doing a bit of filtering, doing a bit of adding things up. So yes, you should have it already. Some things you might not, and it's about thinking about coming up with a robust estimation. So, for example, one of the organisations I worked with, their travel, it was all volunteer based. They didn't have any employees, but they knew that on a weekly basis, they went to the cash and carry to go and buy some things for the bar within their organisation and brought it back. And they knew that they did that once a week. It was a 10-mile round journey. So it was a bit of a calculation around, okay, I estimate we've travelled however many miles a week. So there is a little bit of working out, but most of the data you'll either have recorded anyway, or you should be able to estimate based on your knowledge of your organisation.
And then for any of the inputs, potentially, does the platform do the conversions, or is that something that would need to be thought of before?
Platform does all of the conversions. So all you need to do is know how much stuff you consume, how much stuff you do. What the platform does, it has a conversion factor for every single different type of activity for the amount of greenhouse gas emissions are associated with that type of activity. So whether it's by pound, per pound, or per kilogram, or per kilowatt hour. So you don't have to worry about that at all. That's what the calculator does for you. And those factors are published factors, or factors that we have access to. We're not making those factors up. They're factors that we are bringing in from official sources, which we are then have then built into the calculator.
Lovely. And then a final one from me. If someone, say, has already done a bit of work and found out their carbon footprint, do you think this is still a worthwhile thing for them to get involved in?
Yeah, it is. It kind of depends on how you've calculated it previously. If you've used another calculator that's similar and you're confident about it, perhaps less so. But if you've done it yourself, if you've used a spreadsheet, if you're not entirely confident you've used the right factors, or if, for example, you've only looked at your energy emissions, your scope 1 and scope 2, and you haven't thought about scope 3, and this is a more comprehensive way of doing it, then it's absolutely worthwhile. And all the data that you've already collected, you can insert that same data into the platform. The other thing you'll get that you might not necessarily have got from calculating it before is the carbon reduction plan, which allows you to be compliant to that ppm 006 standard. And it's free. So you're not, apart from spending a bit of time, you're not spending any money on this. It's something that you're getting for free, which yeah, you don't have that opportunity every day.
No, I was just about to re-emphasize that as well. I think it's such a useful tool to have access for, especially when it's through a funded program. You don't have to have any of that financial burden at this stage anyway. So I would really, yeah, I'd really encourage people to take advantage of even the support and the access to the platform through this program. Don't see any more questions in the chat, but again, we're always here if anything comes up post webinar, and of course we've got the bits that you can catch up with online, and we've also got some links in the chat just to help you find where those specifically are. So that that brings us to kind of looking over the key dates that are still remaining as part of the program. So um, from today, as I said earlier on, we've got the access to the platform and the support, which is available until the end of January 2026. So, as I said, I would encourage you reaching out and starting that process if you haven't already. But yes, you do have until the end of January to get that all sorted. Well, yes, that brings us to the end of this webinar, and thank you very much for joining us on this one, and we look forward to seeing you soon.